What's going on, people? It's Kiss Shorty Gaming Nation or Kiss Shorty Views and Vlogs, as I change the channel to now. This subject, I gotta address this again, and I might be addressing this along with a couple other topics as far as masculinity, patriarchy, Victorian age. It's a lot of content I gotta produce and put out there, but I'm gonna address this topic in a couple of videos. One of the lies that Tariq Nasheed has been selling to people, and many of you Black Americans who are FBA, call yourself FBA, that hate Jamaican or Caribbean cats, a lot of y'all been saying that, Caribbean, y'all are the incompetent part of the identity of Black America, especially when it comes to New York Black culture. New York Black culture is unique because New York Black culture is a fusion of Black Americans from the South migrated to New York, and Caribbean Blacks migrated from Trinidad, Jamaica, Haiti, Barbados to New York, fusing together. Not like how in Dragon Ball Z when Goku and Vegeta, they fused to become Gogeta, right? That's what New York identity is. And a lot of Black Americans who call themselves FBA, what they're trying to do is they're trying to erase Caribbean Blacks' contribution to the culture, I guess, for what I guess trying to get some type of reparation money. So they want to kick us out the culture, even though we contribute a big part of their identity, not even just to New York culture, but to the American Black identity. When you look at slavery and you look at the Haitian Revolution, a lot of Creole or Haitian cats, and Haitians started this city of Chicago, right? But a lot of Haitians during that slavery time, they used to migrate back and forth or be transported back and forth from Haiti to the French colonies that was here in America. And when France lost the war, a lot of those like New Orleans, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, part of that Southern Belt, America was able to purchase that space. So Caribbean Blacks, a lot of our identity is part of the foundation of Black America. Remember, on this channel, I talked about how one of the founding fathers of the Negro Masons, or Prince Hall, he was from Barbados. He's Barbadian. This is why you see a lot of Caribbean niggas that are Masons, right? He created the first African Lodge, number 1, African Lodge, number 2. And they did a lot of help when it comes Prince Hall Masons, who Prince Hall was Barbadian. They helped a lot during the slavery time in those areas, especially during the 16th and 17th century. So the Caribbean identity is embedded into American Black identity, especially when you go to Florida, But we're going to go into New York specific identity. Let's begin here. The Caribbean, particularly Jamaican, Trinidadian, and Barbadian, and Haitian influence in New York's style, swagger, and street aesthetics goes back almost a century before hip hop even formed. Right? The early wave, from 1910s to 1940s, the Harlem Renaissance Foundation. Migration identity between 1910 and 1940, a large influx of Caribbean Blacks, mostly Jamaican, Barbados, Trinidadian, and a few from Haiti and the Dominican Republic, settled in Harlem and Brooklyn, especially Crown Heights and Bed-Stuyvesant. These immigrants were often better educated, sometimes more middle class, and very proud of their cultural identity. They saw themselves as British subjects, pre-independence, and carried a sense of formality, self-presentation, and dignity that blended well with Harlem's rising Black middle class. I think the series, Luke Cage, the second season, I think it had a couple of that. It talked about that, right? Fashion and presentation. The Harlem Renaissance aesthetic, clean lines, flashy suits, and bold colors, wasn't just African American Southern migration style. It had Caribbean flair written all over it. Caribbean men, especially Jamaicans, Barbadians, came from colonial societies where sharp dressing symbolized respectability and status. They were influenced by British tailoring traditions, but they remixed it with tropical boldness, bright colors, hats, patterned shirts, silk scarves. This gave rise to the Harlem dandy, which later evolved into fly and flashy New York archetype. Let me show you what the dandy was, right? Give me a second. Man, I gotta do this topic straight flush throughout the week. Because, I didn't think this was gonna be that bad, but apparently it is. And I gotta do it. Got to do it. So give me a moment. Let me type it up. Harlem Dandy. So let me share this screen. Harlem Dandy, right? So let me make sure it's showing on StreamYard. Move. There it is. The Harlem Dandy, which is a specific culture figure and not something that was Caribbean. The Harlem Dandy is a style that emerged in Harlem, New York as part of the broader history of Black dandyism, a movement that also has roots in the Caribbean. Dandies invoke location using fashion for self-expression, dignity, and resistance against oppression, with Caribbean dandyism blending European styles with Afro-Caribbean influences, and the Harlem Dandy emerging from the African-American experience in New York City. The Harlem Renaissance was a key period where the figures of the Harlem Dandy emerged. The style was a way for Black people to assert their dignity, work, and society. The Harlem Dandy is a cultural icon that embodies this fusion fashion and identity, with legacy that includes different era styles from the zoot suits of the 1920s to the more modern look of today. The Caribbean was a crucial cultural crossroads for dandyism, where European fashion met African tradition. In places like Jamaica, Haiti, dandies blended European formal wear with local rhythms, colors, and attitude. This style became a potent tool to challenge social boundaries in societies with strict racial hierarchies. The influence traveled through colonial networks, eventually contributing to the broader movement that also includes the Harlem Dandy. The Black Dandy of Harlem Renaissance, someone used this dress to assert themselves. All right, so let's look at where this originated from. Right? Although the dandy as a figure originated in England, dandyism as a philosophy was significantly advanced by French writers such as Charles Baudelaire and Honoré de Balzac. I don't know how the fuck to say the words, right? So look at this. So let me see if I can find some pictures. Right. See, a lot of the Caribbean Blacks, they hail from, I think that's Spike Lee. They hail from middle class Jamaica. A lot of British colonialism, and they adopted a lot of the British style of dressing, right? Tariq Nasheed likes to make fun of Caribbean Blacks. Said all we came with was just the mesh marinas and all the other bullshit. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to steal Caribbean identity that we added into it and say we didn't come up with it, but they came up with everything. That's the lie that they're saying. The Black Dandy, a powerful culture figure whose evolution weaves together defiance, dignity, and dashing style. Make sure I'm showing this. No, my fault. Share this. The Black Dandy. All right. Right? Traced through 18th, 19th century Europe, where the figure emerged as fashionable, self-styled man that used elegance as both armor and art form. In England, George Burman was, right? So I don't feel like reading all of this, right? Yet the European dandy was not confined to Britain. In France, Charles Baudelaire articulated the dandy as a rebel figure, someone that refused to conform to bourgeoisie's norms. The Persian flaneur strolling through modernity in pursuit of aesthetic pleasure shared many of the dandy's traits: detachment, refined taste, and deliberate cultivation of self. French dandies like Count Robert de Montique further blurred the line between fashion, performance, and gender fluidity. Also, that's a lot of that Marxist shit over there. However, the fully grasp of scope and power of dandyism, we must move beyond Europe In Africa, the concept of dandy took on a new dimension during the colonial era. And afterward, as black men strategically used dress to assert identity, pride, and resistance in the face of European domination in the Congo, Sepors, members of La Sapi, emerged as post-colonial response to European fashion. These men dressed in brightly colored designer suits and flamboyant accessories were not merely imitating European styles. They were remixing them, subverting colonial expectation through exaggerated elegance. Their defiance lay in turning the tools of their oppressors, Western fashion, into statements and cultural agency, self-worth, and even spiritual discipline. Right? And then this is what now. Similarly, the African American dandy tradition, influenced by both African heritage and American cultural evolution, was deeply rooted in resistance. Enslaved Africans in the Americas often used Sunday best for special occasion wear as a subtle act of self-determination. By the Harlem Renaissance of the 1920s, black dandies like Langston Hughes, Duke Ellington redefined masculinity, sophistication, and modernity through sartorial grace and intellectual expression. Their fashion was not vanity; it was protest. It said, "I am worthy, I am cultured, and I demand to be seen." In the Caribbean, dandyism carried yet another layer of complexity. Colonized yet cultural rich, islands like Jamaica and Haiti birthed dandies that blended European formal wear with Afro-Caribbean rhythm, color, and attitude. In Jamaica, the rude boy of the 1960s wore sharp suits, thin thighs, polished shoes, symbols of rebellion and cool under economic social pressures. Meanwhile, Haitian dandies, influenced by French colonial legacies and voodoo aesthetics, often portrayed formality with flamboyance, creating looks that oscillated between spiritual depth and streetwise bravado. That was Kumpanansi's character. Shout out to Orlando, I forgot his last name, played in Kumpanansi. Want me to show you? Let me show you that. Let me show you. Let me show you Anansi Orlando Jones. Let me show you this. Look at Kumpanansi. Look at the suits he had on. This is Kumpanansi here. This is Orlando Jones. Shout out to Orlando. Look at the purple suit. Right? He had the purple suit that he wore in that scene he had. This is him. This is a reflection of the dandy or the Haitian dandy, right? This style is more of like a Haitian kind of style, right? Because a lot of Haitian cats, they have like this smooth kind of swagger. You know, top hats, the boiler hat, tribe hat. Caribbean niggas had the same thing too, right? So let me tell you something. Let me show you something. Jamaican dandies. All right, Jamaican dandies. Maybe they might not show it. Ah, this is the suits. This is somebody's social media. So this is this type of suits a lot of Jamaican niggas wore in the 80s. Right? My pops. So I'm not going to share her. I'm not going to share her social media. I don't want to put our pops on the spot. But if you look here, I don't have it on the stage. My fault. Learning to build a ship. So I showed y'all Kumpanansi, right? So this is Kumpanansi right here. Orlando Jones, right? This is a dandy expression. This is Orlando Jones was very intelligent with this character, because if you look at the suit, it describes how those black dandies were, right? And Kumpanansi is like the god of intelligence, right? He can see the Kumpanansi. He can see the game that's being played, right? But yeah, he's very intelligent. This is an example of a black dandy, right? And in the movie or in the series American Gods, Orlando Jones very brilliantly flipped from Caribbean Creole to African American. It was a brilliant expression. So it's like he combined all different cultures of the African diaspora into one, right? So let's go to Jamaican Dan dandies. All right. Put up there. Look at that polo with the shorts and the shirt. When I was on a panel with Izzy Bags, and I tried to tell Coach Ferg that this is the thing about New York culture. New York black culture's black identity is unique to New York because it's a combination of Caribbean blacks and Southern blacks, fusing both identities that were uniquely ours and putting it together. So most you Southern Bama niggas, you didn't have culture or you didn't know what it was about until New York created a culture. And everybody mimicked it after that. And I said that as a New York nigga from Brooklyn, non-apologetically. Look at this. Let's throw it. The black dandies. Top hats. A young man wearing a formal suit and a top hat, circa 1890. Bill Robinson. All right. This is what a lot of Caribbean blacks wore. Zoot suit, circa. Right. John Hazel, Harold Wilmot. Like Wilmot is a Jamaican last name, right? John Richards arriving in the UK from Jamaica aboard the Empire, written Rush circa 1948. Look at the suits they have on. Look at this, zoot suits. Right? Sammy Davis Jr. Make sure this is showing up. Yeah, it's showing up on StreamYard, right? Look at the fashion they had back then. I might bring some of them suits back. I don't know what this nigga is doing. Oh, who the fuck is this? Oh, this is Grace Jones. Andre Leon, Haitian. All right. There go your boy Spike Lee, Tupac, Snoop Dogg. All right. Mind you, Tupac is an East Coast nigga, bro. Okay. All right. Andre 3000. All right. This was that culture in the Harlem Renaissance. You can tell this nigga right here is Haitian. Well, I can a little bit, right? Because Haitians they have that smooth kind of jazz kind of walking style to them and flavor to them, right? Hold on, let me show y'all this. The Black Dandy, the Dandy Monarch magazine, right? Dandyism. All right, they go W. Du Bois. Right, so y'all understand the picture I'm trying to paint, right? So we're gonna remove that from the stage and we go back to this. So a lot of Caribbean blacks influenced the Harlem Dandy. Harlem Dandy from whether it's from UK culture, the Harlem Dandy in African American culture, or the Caribbean Dandy, all fused, right, in the Harlem Renaissance. When you look at Malcolm X zoot suit era, those oversized suits of colorful combination were not just African American rebellion. They were also reflective of Caribbean color confidence. Caribbean immigrants were never afraid of flamboyance. They equated being seen sharply dressed with power. Right? Mid-century, 1950s to the 1960s. Sound system, dancehall, and street swag. So Jamaicans, we already had our swag. Caribbean niggas, we had a swag already, unique to us. Right? Music and party culture. Jamaicans and Trinidadians began influencing the block party and sound system culture long before hip hop. They brought the concept of mumble DJs, heavy bass, and the idea of the selector, what would become the DJ. The Bronx, Queens, and Brooklyn dancehall basement parties in the 1960s and 70s were precursors to hip-hop black parties. Caribbean youth, especially second-generation Jamaicans, fused soul, R&B, and ska into their personal swagger, laid back but confident. So it's Caribbean niggas taking what's already here in America, along with their own flavor and ska, because ska, that's Caribbean, that's a Caribbean creation, and molding it together, right? Swagger and grooming. The early fade and lineup culture in New York barbershops evolved through combination of South African American barbering and Caribbean meticulousness. Because Caribbean niggas like, I wish I could put my father on the phone and my older brother on the phone so they can describe to you how men are supposed to be dressed according to Caribbean culture, right? It was very meticulous, very sharp, very clean cut. My pops used to bald his head and shine his head, and suits he used to wear on, like when he showed me how to dress and shit. The early fade, right? Jamaicans and Trinidadians had a long history of razor sharp grooming, goatees, clean lines, and precision haircuts were marks of self-respect. In the Caribbean, trimming haircuts was serious business, and their precision fused perfectly with Harlem and Brooklyn barbershop culture. By the 1970s, the New York clean cut with edge, sharp lineups, fades, waves became the masculine beauty standard. That aesthetic was as much Brooklyn Caribbean as it was Harlem African American. I told you, like, New York culture is unique to New York, my nigga. And to deny Caribbean blacks is to deny New York culture. And I said New York culture. I say it again, New York culture. Because when you look at hip hop, white people in the when you look at dance hall parties, white people in the parties, Spanish people in the parties, Italians in the parties, Irish in the parties. So man, fucking Tariq Nasheed and the rest of you FBA bums. The 1970s and through the 1980s, dancehall meets b-boy culture. Oh, hold on, let me look up Rude Boy. So let me maybe I hope I remember to put it in this. The flash of the 1980s. The Congo hats, Clark shoes, gold chains, and tracksuits was a direct fusion of Caribbean garrison style from Jamaica and Trinidad. Chris Clark's gold and hats. So let's look at Congo hats, right? Congo hats, Clark shoes. Congo hats. All right. All of these. Wallaby. I know Vibes Cartel build a whole song off of this. Jamaican. Oh, let me say, Rude Boy. Rude Boy. Culture. All right, so let me go back to that. All right, look at this. Clark's Wallaby. This is what they wore, right? Clark's. Every year, Adman, especially the boomer generation and Gen X, had a Clark's in their damn thing. Look at the outfit this nigga's wearing. Rude shoes, Jamaica love affair with Clark's, a continuous link. Let me visit this article. Rude shoes, Jamaica love affair with Clark's, right? Who is this? Let me share this tab. This is nothing offensive but a pair of Clark's desert boots, Treks, and Wallabies. These are the simple suede chuckers that your mother probably bought you for your first day of elementary school. And what could be offensive about that? That's, I think, primary school they're talking about. Yet in Jamaica, the one word most associated with Clark's is, what the hell? I don't know what that means. Is is, as in Rude Boys, the rebellious subculture that emerged amongst Jamaican lower class during the 1960s. Driven by reggae backbeat, Jamaica's disenfranchised youth became enamored with the skinny suits, ruckus music, and devil-may-care demeanor. They defined England's counterculture movement. The interplay between youths, cultures in Jamaica and England was mutually beneficial relationship that ultimately gave Rude Boys a chance to separate themselves from slum life in a way that simultaneously, audaciously, and aspirationally. The Jamaican niggas gave UK its culture too, right? I don't know who this was. But see dub plates up there, right? For Jamaican youth, the consumption of English goods raised them up above their lower class life and gave them something to strive for towards, which is how Clarks, which back then were produced in street Somerset, England, came to be so popular in Jamaica. As the shoes became a so Clarks, let me show you again. Clarks is an idea that originated from where? Which back then were produced in street Somerset, England, came to be so popular in Jamaica. So Clarks was something that's unique to England, but it became popular in Jamaica, right? As the shoes became a status symbol, Rude Boys would stop at nothing to get a pair of their own, which of course spurred a series of shoe robberies that eventually got so out of hand that police officers began to instantly assume that anyone wearing Clarks was a thug. This did little to dampen the Rude Boy love affair with their suede chuckers. And as Jamaican ska and dancehall musicians began to tour internationally, they always made sure to bring back suitcases full of Clarks for their friends and fans back in Jamaica. Let me look at what Say Truckers is. I might listen. I'm making some great money. I'm about to go. So this is Truckers. Unique to England, or manufactured in England or produced in England, Jamaican niggas took it and made it their own, or innovated it and made it their own style, right? Truckers. As Jamaicans, so the shoes might not be made in England any longer, but the Jamaican infatuation with Clarks remains as strong as ever. Having transcended rude boy culture and spread throughout the islands years ago, Jamaica's relationship with these crepe soul shoes has even inspired a book, Clarks in Jamaica, which features scores of great images like the ones seen above and below, and as well worth checking out if you too are in a Clarks connoisseur. Look at this old brethren style, bro. Look at the sound system, the bass box, colorful clothes, bright, right? I don't remember what group this was. All right. So cut the fuckery, right? So now let's look at Rude Boy. Let's look up Rude Boy. Rude Boy culture. Share this tab, right? So look at this brother right here. Here comes the hop steppers. Rude Boy style making a comeback. Sharp suits with crop flood plants, thin ties, and porcupine and trilby hats. And Clark boots, of course. No exception, the enduring Rude Boy silhouette is instantly recognizable to any sharp sartorial eye, remixing the sleek mid-century fits of American jazz musicians and gangster films. And their style evolved into something distinctly Caribbean. Over years, music legends like Derek Morgan, Desmond Decker, the Specials, and even Bob Marley in his early days made the look iconic, spreading its influence across globally. But the fashion figure represents much more than superficial fun. It has a deep-seated history in Caribbean culture. British artist and academic Harris Elliott dissected the rude boy culture's impact in his landmark 2014 exhibition Return of Rude Boy with the photographer Dean Chalkley, displayed at the Somerset House in London. The exhibit featured Chalkley's portraits of contemporary Rudies in the city alongside a chronicle of styles, influence, and evolution. The show aimed to spread awareness about the identity and culture without compromise, says Harris Elliott. The Rude Boy story was rarely shared in the same way that people would talk about punks, mods, and skinheads, but it's very clear that it influenced them. The truth of the story needs to be paramount. A cultural narrative is always integral and imperative to that, right? According to Elliott, the Rude Boy ethos fully blossomed as Jamaica's gained independence in 1962. It image remarked a social political reckoning for black youth facing poverty and high unemployment rates in the newly minted nation for them. The style was anti-establishment, a fashionable resistance to criminal labels society placed on them. The sleek tailoring clearly harkened back to respectable English suiting, accepted as gentlemanly standard across former British empires. But by twisting the proportions and adding Caribbean flair and accessories in overall manner, the Rude Boy became a subversive persona with which black youths could proclaim their self-worth and value on their own terms. There was a sense of self-sufficient outside of what the government and those with power deemed you can be in society, says Elliott. That's what I call the sovereign masculinity. This is Jamaican black men reclaiming their sovereign identity, right? I'm saying I might bring that style back. Fuck you talking about? I might bring this style back, bro. Watch this. Sheldon Shepherd sees the rude boy persona as an escape from the real life societal ills that people face, affecting more than one individual reaches. It originated among the downtrodden, among the people who were fielding for their identity, finding space in a world that they couldn't really recognize, and where they never really had a voice. In Shepard's opinion, the rude boy is someone seeking power in society, where they feel powerless. Power comes from going against the grain, he says, being different, being outcast of the system. He also argues that the rude boy's rebellious heart has deep kinship with many of the cultural art forms that define Jamaica and the broader Caribbean. Reggae music, dub poetry, dub music, dancehall, all express that rebelliousness, says Shepard. He, like others who are proponents of the culture, assert that people often focus on the violent perception of the rude boy instead of the systematic violence that created the conditions in which the archetype would thrive. Rude boy culture, right? This is East New York, Brooklyn, right here, by the way. So that's that. Let's go back to here. Let's see what else we can find. There you go. So Caribbean culture, Washington Post. Let's see what Washington Post has to say. Oh shit, I can't. I gotta sign up for this motherfucker. Nah, I don't need to sign up for that. Stop sharing. Nah, I'm not doing all that right now. Anyway, let's get through it, right? So I'm showing you what Caribbean nigga styles were. The Kango hats. Did I show up the Kango hats? Kango hats. Kango hats. I know a lot of Haitian niggas that wear these. All right. I'm about to bring some of these styles back, my nigga. Right? Kangol hats. Jamaican. If I'm not mistaken, I'm thinking that movie Shatas. I think you saw this in that movie. I don't know, I might be wrong. Right? What's this? Oh, never mind. All right. So that's that. Black American urban street swagger, sneakers, tracksuits, and athletic wear. Caribbean men in New York carried a swagger of toughness and pride, deeply tied to their homeland culture where appearance equals dominance and respect. Dancehall culture also normalized flamboyant masculinity. Loud colors, gold, expressive movement, the attitude gave New York street culture its bravado, speech and rhythm. Even New York slang carries Caribbean undertones. Words like brethren, ting, irie, gal, and even respect, like them is a respect, my brethren, became cross-cultural imports to Caribbean neighborhoods. You could hear the cadence of patois influencing early Bronx and Brooklyn street talk, especially in areas like Flatbush and Crown Heights. Right, my pops used to live in Crown Heights. He and my mother, no, not Crown Heights, Dick Washington Heights. I think I'm confusing the two. Um, he and my mother divorced. He used to live out in, I think, either Washington Heights or Crown Heights, one of those two. To answer your question directly and objectively, yes, Caribbean blacks had a massive influence on New York's cultural identity since the Harlem Renaissance. Yes, their sense of style, grooming, and expressive masculinity created a unique New York energy that didn't exist anywhere else. Not in the South, not in the Midwest, and not even London's black community, though similar roots existed. And yes, the fusion of Harlem Renaissance sophistication and Caribbean flamboyance became the DNA of what we call New York swag. New York didn't just inherit culture, it synthesized it. Caribbean immigrants brought discipline, style, and the flair that gave New York its unmistakable flavor. Harlem Dandy, the Caribbean sharpness. The Harlem Dandy and Caribbean sharpness were to look Harlem street photos, nightclubs like the Cotton Club, and gatherings of black professionals. You'll see men, three-piece suits, fedoras, silk scarves, and two-tone shoes. Caribbean immigrants, especially Jamaicans and Barbadians, in Harlem often wore these British-style suits. These are British-style suits. In Harlem, often wore these British-style suits, but with brighter palette and more fitted tailoring than their southern-born peers. There's a colonial British Caribbean influence. They dress as if every day were a portrait day. Photos from the period, such as James Van Der Zee's work, show the immaculate pride in posture and presentation. So let's go into that. James Van D. Who the fuck is this? Van D. Z. Van D. Z. Right? Look, James Van Der Z photographs, and this is he could have been. It's possible that he could have been a Haitian, right? A lot of Haitians have a lot of those French Creole last names, right? The right. So this is one of them. Life in Harlem during the 1920s and 1930s and beyond. Residents of this majority black neighborhood in New York City turned to Van Der Z and his camera to mark special occasions. Right? Oh, this is his woman. He had a light skinned broad. Uh-huh. Look at this. Oh, who's that? This is Marcus Garvey. I don't know who these two is, but this is Marcus Garvey. Let me show you the outfits Marcus Garvey used to have on. Marcus Garvey. And a lot of Black Americans tell you that they accepted Marcus Garvey. That's not true. Maybe like the Nation of Islam or the more Science Temple of America or like segments of Black culture accepted him, but the majority of Black culture did not accept Marcus Garvey, right? So this is what he wore. Share. Oh, I forgot to share the flipping screen. All right. So this is the first one, right? This is make sure I'm showing it on the screen. Oh. All right, here it is. All right. So this is Marcus Garvey. This is what he wore. This is the photograph. Marcus Garvey with George or Marquis and Prince Kojo. Right? Look at these suits. Right? This is what this author, James Van Der Zee, and I think this is, like I said again, I think he's Haitian because a lot of Haitians have those last names, right? This is the pictures he took of that time, right? Clinton silver print, Robert B. Also, this is where they printed it, right? Portrait of a couple. All right. Let me look further into his work, right quick. He said he was born, and this is the brother that took the pictures. He said he was born 1886, 1983. Let me see what was his nationality. Lenox, what? Massachusetts? What was that? Yeah, right. So he's born there, but he has a French last name. Let me see what was his nationality. Okay, so he's saying he's an African American. That's his ethnicity, but he has that French last name. I'm saying so. Like a lot of the South, especially in the Southern Belt, has a lot of Haitian Creole influence. So, was he Haitian? Let's see. All right, so he has a last name. Doesn't say he's Haitian, it says he's African American, but that last name is Creole influence or Haitian or French influence. So who knows, right? Right. He died in 1983. Shout out to that brother. All right. Also, let me show you what Marcus Garvey used to wear. So this is what Marcus Garvey wore, right? He wore these. This is supposed to be Noble Drew Ali on his I guess his right side or on the left. Right? On the left, this is supposed to be Noble Drew Ali. Right? Look what he had on. Look at this one. Look at this. Oh, that's supposed to be his wife. Right? Wow. You know, when everything is said and done, hopefully I was sharing that. Make sure I share it again. When everything is said and done, everybody's going to look back at this time as, yo, how do we let Tariq Nasheed fuck shit up? There was a colonial British Caribbean influence. They dress as if, so I already read that. So I showed you where the photos came from. Caribbean meets Harlem, cool, right? So this is from the 1950s to the 1960s. Where to look, photos of Harlem social clubs, the Nation of Islam, and Caribbean parades in Brooklyn, like early West Indian Day parades. Men grooming got sharper. You start to see razor lineups, goatees, and natural waves. The combination of Southern barbering skill and Caribbean precision birthed the clean cut look that defined 1960s Harlem and Brooklyn. It's funny how the series Luke Cage, they showed you both Brooklyn and they showed you Harlem, right? The combination of Southern, all right, so Caribbean immigrants maintained high grooming standards. Fresh was not optional. Malcolm X early and later looks show that transformation from flamboyant zoot suit to razor sharp respectability. So we influenced the Nation of Islam too, New York's culture. Also, the early Jamaican rude boy look from Kingston, pressed flag, slim size, tribby hats, appears almost identical to Harlem and Bed-Stuy style in the same years, right? Tribby hats. And I showed you what they dress like with the rude boy style, right? And I showed you the brief history. Brooklyn's Caribbean swagger solidifies. Where to look? Flatbush, Crown Heights, and Bronx party scenes. By now, the Caribbean identity was deeply interwoven with New York's Black youth identity. Men wore tight shirts, open collars, gold jewelry, pointed shoes, and stylized afros. Caribbean men, especially Jamaicans and Trinidadians, introduced the sound system fashion. Statement belts, clean shoes, patterned shirts, which blended with Harlem's traditional flash and self-expression. You'll also see the beginnings of the fade and lineup culture, sharper lines, distinct edges, and the start of what would dominate the 1980s. Just think about it. If you got Caribbean black men coming to America and now being barbers and cutting people's hair, lining up people's hair, that's going to have a influence later on, right? Dancehall parties in Brooklyn, Bronx started the influential local Black Americans even before Kool Herc, a Jamaican immigrant, introduced hip hop DJing techniques, right? I don't give a fuck what Tariq Nasheed disagree with. Dancehall parties in Brooklyn and Bronx started influencing local Black Americans even before Kool Herc, a Jamaican immigrant, introduced hip hop and DJing techniques. The 1980s, the birth of the modern New York look, were to look early hip hop crews, Flatbush and Queen Street shots, and West Indian parades. By this time, the Caribbean aesthetic, clean, colorful, confident, merged with the urban athleticism. Men wore Kangol hats, Clark Wallabies, gold chains, Adidas, tracksuits, leather bombers. The sharp lineup, the fade, the confident pose, all had Caribbean undertones. The rude boy meets the b-boy. Look, defined the city. Brooklyn's Caribbean youth brought swagger, while Harlem and Bronx added rhythm. Hairstyles like the high top fade, flat top designs drew from barbershop precision that had long been Caribbean American art form. What you're seeing in the photos is this: British colonial pride plus Harlem elegance plus Caribbean color plus Southern barbering. That combination became New York's visual identity. It's not just style, it's cultural posture, proud, precise, and performative. Caribbean immigrants brought not only fashion, but also philosophy of appearance. That how you look reflects how you respect yourself and your people. That ethic reshaped the city's Black masculine image. And a lot of Caribbean households, my father told me that. My father taught that to me, right? So this is not a lie. No, it's not accurate or historically honest to say Caribbean Blacks cosplayed FBA. What actually happened is that New York's black identity was built out of a fusion between Southern black immigrants or migrants and Caribbean immigrants who brought their own pre-existing culture, pride, and aesthetic. Migration reality, two streams meeting in Harlem and Brooklyn. The Great Migration, 1910s to the 1970s, brought millions of Southern blacks to northern cities, including New York. At the same time, the 1900s to the 1950s, tens of thousands of Caribbean blacks, Jamaican, Trinidadian, Barbadian, and Haitian, migrated directly to New York, Boston, and sometimes Philadelphia. So from the start, Harlem and Brooklyn weren't one people copying one another. There were two cultural streams merging in the same city. Each group brought distinct language, dress, music, and ideas about manhood, womanhood, class, and race pride. Caribbean identity was already fully formed before arrival. Caribbean people didn't show up in New York empty-handed and then imitate anyone. By the early 1900s, the Caribbean already had a strong black middle class under British colonial education. Cultural nationalism, think Marcus Garvey, UNIA, and Jamaica before it came to Harlem. Distinct musical and sartorial identities, ska, calypso, mental, formal wear, with bright Caribbean color, etc. So when they landed in Harlem, they didn't have to cosplay anything. They brought an entire worldview that was already self-confident and expressive, like I told you with the rude boy and the dandyism, right? Where cosplay narratives come from. In recent years, some people online, especially within certain FBA circles, use cosplay to imply that Caribbean immigrants later adopted FBA or civil rights history as their own. But historically, Caribbean immigrants were in the trenches too. Marcus Garvey, Stokely Carmichael coined the term Black Power and pushed it. That's where Black Panthers get the idea from. Stokely Carmichael was a Trinidadian. So the history of the Black Panther symbol came from a girl that went to the NCC college. That symbol, the Black Panther, Stokely Carmichael pushed it, coined it, organized it, pushed it, popularized it. The Black Panther Party took. Let me show you Stokely Carmichael. Stokely Carmichael. So, and I did a video on this brother already. All right. This is Stokely Carmichael. All right. This is the Black Panther shirt that he. For sure. National Civil Rights Museum post. On this day in 1941, Stokely Carmichael, later known as Kwame True, was born a visionary leader and a powerful voice in the fight for Black liberation. Carmichael played a pivotal role in the Student Nonviolent Coordination Committee and led the Black Power movement. He spearheaded the Lawndes County Freedom Organization in Alabama, where he fought to desegregate schools and improve conditions for Black students, championed political education and improve conditions for, education and voter registration for rural Black communities, pushed for the fair representation of federal farm subsidy committees that had long excluded Black farmers. So a lot of you Black niggas keep talking about you need land to farm and build farms. He helped to push that. Carmichael's call for Black power redefined the movement, demanding that not just integration, but dignity, self-determination, and true equality. His legacy continues to inspire generations committed to justice and social change. Caribbean. But, we want to hijack and cosplay y'all. So because he created Black power, does that mean when y'all say Black Americans say Black power, and you have the FBA fist that comes from that, are y'all cosplaying the Trinidadian? I don't think so. I don't think y'all want to go there. Malcolm X's mother was a Grenadian, and his father was a Garveyite. That mixture is New York's essence. So when someone says Caribbean copied FBA culture, they're missing that Caribbean and FBA identities. That's what y'all FBI, y'all like in something else. Identities were interwoven in New York before either had modern labels, right? I was watching a stream hosted by Chris McCure and I guess another brother, a lawyer dude. The lawyer dude that said that because of some assumed high suicidal rate of Caribbean blacks that we couldn't handle the pressure of America. What the fuck are you talking about? All the Caribbean blacks that came to America, from Prince Hall, who was Barbadian, from bro, it's like FBA are going to the extreme lengths to discredit to discredit Caribbean blacks, and to erase our contributions to America. It's like that's what they're doing. And then now when you critique them, they're going to say, oh, see, they don't want us to delineate. Or when we delineate, they get mad. What they're doing is they're trying to create a straw man argument. An argument that's not what we're making. The argument that's being made is that, yeah, Tariq Nasheed and many FBA going around since COVID talking about how, it's the Caribbean blacks' fault for gang banging and dope dealing. It's Caribbean blacks' fault for this, that, and the third. When you have an American gangster series showcasing you mainly FBA drug dealers and dope dealers. Gang banging started in LA as according to them. The whole Snowfall series, was that about tethers or was that about Black Americans, Freeway Ricky Ross, and how crack cocaine hit LA, and how gang banging, cripping, and blood is in LA. Most of your biggest gangs in America are FBA. When it comes to black culture, Blood and Crip, that's FBA. The history of the Crips, FBA. Because it is, New York was the first major U.S. city where Caribbean rhythm, style, and language became mainstream Black American expression. That's why Brooklyn has patois split into Black American slang. The idea of being fresh, sharp, or fly has the meticulous Caribbean touch. The hustler mentality and the pride and presentation both trace back to Caribbean social codes about dignity under colonialism. But that doesn't erase FBA contributions. So I'm not going to lie like Turk the Sheep. I'm not going to try to erase Black America's contributions to America to uplift his own, to uplift Caribbean blacks. I'm not going to lie like that. I tell the truth. And the truth is, to deny Caribbean blacks' contribution to New York black culture, or even American black culture, is to deny the very black identity that drives black culture. That's what that's like. Southern blacks brought the soul, musical genius, and survival wisdom that made the culture real, right? So, but that doesn't erase FBA contributions. Southern blacks brought the soul, the musical genius, and the survival wisdom that made the culture real. Like I said, it's like Caribbean blacks and Southern blacks going to New York and they're making a fusion dance to become Gogeta to beat Frieza, the white man or the oppressor, right? No Caribbean blacks did not cosplay FBA. What happened is that the Caribbean and FBA identities fused into New York, producing a distinctive hybrid, the New York black cultural identity, that neither side can claim exclusively. If you remove either element, New York loses its flavor. Caribbean energy gave it color, edge, and rhythm. FBA roots gave it depth, soul, and continuity. Together, they created what the world now calls the New York swag. So let's pinpoint what the Caribbean style of flavor looked like by element, right? Under British colonial rule, the formal social behavior and dress were modeled on European styles. Tailored suits, dress shirts, ties, polished shoes, hats, formal portraiture, and civic leaders often replicate. Sorry, I can't say that word. My bad. Some of these words, I know what they mean. I just can't pronounce them, so forgive me. And civic leaders often replicated British manners of dress and visible mark of status and respectability, right? So, this is me getting the sources. Tropical adaptations, practical and stylish. The tropical or casual formal wear, looser shorts, short-sleeve tailored shirts, lightweight fabrics developed for climate. Example, other variations of tailored shirts and suits, sometimes called local names like Caribbean style shirts, These styles kept the formal silhouette but adapted to the heat, and island life. Carnival, calypso, and colorful public dress. Carnival Trinidad and calypso scenes introduced bold colors, patterns, exotic or ornamentations, and performance dresses. These public spectacles reinforce flamboyance and performative presentation as central to island identity. Right? Dandy and rude boy subcultures, urban youth styles. By the 1950s and 60s, especially in Jamaica, an urban youth dandy rude boy style had emerged. Narrow lapel suits, tribal hats, slim ties, pointed shoes, and swaggering posture. This was a deliberate street-level performance of dignity, toughness, and status, visible in Kingston streets and dance halls. That style is what later traveled with migrants and influenced New York street fashion. Music reputation. My cat trying to get into the video. Cut it out. Cut it out. Cut it out. Music representation, sound system, calypso, mento. Music scenes, calypso, mento, later ska, were tied to how people dressed and presented themselves at parties and shows. Sharp shoes, standout shirts, hats, jewelry, and aesthetic of standing out. These mobile party cultures prefigured New York's DJ party scene, right? Why does it matter for New York? Caribbean migrants did not invent these looks in New York. They brought pre-existing social meaningful styles that mixed from a British-derived respectability with island flamboyance and urban street swagger. That visual code, sharp tailoring, and boldness, plus careful grooming, became a visible component in the hybrid New York Black identity. Right? So, I think I already showed you some of these. Right? You can pause this and look up some of these yourselves. I think I showed you a lot of these already. Fades and lineups, New York as the incubator. The low top fade, high top fade, and sharp lineups were widely recognized as originating in New York City, particularly in Harlem, Brooklyn, and the Bronx. Historical context, these haircuts began to crystallize in the late 1960s, early 1970s in black barbershops. Barbers competed for precision, creativity, and clean edges. By the 1980s, the high top fade became a visual signature of New York urban youth, coinciding with the early hip hop scene. Think of crews like Run DMC, the Juice Crew, and even early B-boys. Their haircuts weren't just style, they were identity. The mechanics and philosophy. The fade is a precise sculpting and technique. Hair is cut very short on the sides and gradually increase in length toward the top. The lineup adds regular edges around the hairline. Both required barbers and specialized skill. NYC barbershop became center for innovation. It was so as much about discipline and pride as fashion. It showed that man was meticulous, socially aware, and part of the local identity networks. Outside New York, variants of the fade existed elsewhere in the U.S., but the high-top exaggerated geometric fade with the sharp lineup was largely uniquely New York. Other cities like Chicago, Philadelphia, and Los Angeles had haircuts influenced by general black barbering traditions. But the sky-high New York fade, often worn with waves, are intricate designs. It's regional creation. In other countries like London and Toronto, fades appeared later and were influenced by New York trends. Caribbean influence. Traditional black Caribbean hairstyles did not historically include fades in the precise barber science way New York developed them. In Jamaica, Trinidad, and Barbados prior to migration, men's hair was generally short, natural, or in locks or dreadlocks. Some urban youth rude boy styled hair with slick back looks, side parts, or small mohawks, but not the gradual tapering fading precision. Caribbean men valued grooming precision, but the fade was as a geometric haircut is New York innovation. While Caribbean influence did contribute, pride in appearance, discipline in grooming, and the concept of haircut as a status symbol. Caribbean youth migrating to New York were already accustomed to hair as an identity, which meshed perfectly with New York's innovative barber culture. Jamaican hairstyles pre- and mid-20th century. Most urban Jamaican men in Kingston, Montego Bay kept short, closely cropped hair. Practical for tropical climate, hair was groomed with pomades, oils, and combs for shine and smoothness. This style emphasized cleanliness and respectability, not geometric patterns. Narrow lapel suits, travel hats, and slick back or side parted hair. Hair often had a slight wave or shine, but no taper fade in the New York sense. Youth culture prized flamboyance and posture, but the haircut itself was simply more about presentation than artistic barbering. Dreadlocks, mostly associated with Rastafarian, emerging into the 1930s, from 1930s to the 1940s. One is a spiritual and cultural statement, not a fashion-forward geometric styling, right? Natural soft. So this is for Trinidadians, right? With occasional slick back styles for formal events. Carnival participants sometimes added decorative elements, hats, feathers, but the base hairstyle was short and functional. Youth urban culture in Port of Spain and San Fernando occasionally had rebellious styles like mohawks or side-parted slick styles, but not fades. Grooming and identity. Like Jamaica, Trinidad emphasized cleanliness, pride, and presentation as symbols of status. Caribbean barbers were skilled at precise cutting, but fades were not part of the tradition, right? The next phase. So basically, to sum it up, different styles of haircuts from Caribbean culture, merging with the New York identity and how they did things, created something unique, right? You see a lot of Caribbean niggas with like the fades, some of the haircut with the mohawks, parted down their thing, and I might start doing them styles in my hair, right? You see that a lot, right? Who were the Harlem Hellfighters? Who were the Harlem Hellfighters? Officially the 369th Infantry Regiment of the U.S. Army during World War I. They were known as the Harlem Hellfighters for their courage, resilience, and long time in combat on the Western Front. Primarily an African-American regiment, part of the segregated U.S. military. Majority Black Americans from Harlem and other U.S. cities, mostly northern and southern migrants. Caribbean Blacks, a significant minority of soldiers, were Caribbean immigrants, particularly from Jamaica, Barbados, Trinidad, and other islands. Some sources estimate up to 30 to 40% of some units were foreign-born Caribbean. Puerto Ricans, Latin Americans, there were a few, but they were not a major component. Puerto Rican participation in World War I was limited. The U.S. drafted them in 1917 after they became U.S. citizens. Spanish or other Latinos were rare or incidental in this regiment. So the composition-wise, 60 to 70% Black Americans, 30 to 40% Caribbean immigrants, right? So Caribbean Blacks, Jamaican, Trinidadian, they composed 30 to 40% of the Harlem Hellfighters. Caribbean soldiers brought military experience. Many had served in colonial militias under the British. Discipline, pride, and different worldview of Black identity. This mix, which I think is what Tariq Nasheed is trying to do, they're trying to monopolize on what's being Black, which is a Marxist, communist, top-down thing. That is a W.E. Du Bois talented tactic. Because from top down, Black Americans want to define to everybody else what it is to be Black. Right? The mix of Caribbean and African American soldiers strengthened the cohesion and contributed to the regiment's reputation for toughness. Some accounts mention that Caribbean soldiers were already more familiar with European military protocol due to colonial training, which sometimes gave them an advantage in organization and tactics. Caribbean soldiers brought military experience. Many, I already put that. Sorry, that's a typo. The Harlem Hellfighters helped to break stereotypes about Black soldiers, showing bravery and skill to both the U.S. and European allies. Their music and cultural impact. James Reese, Europe, and the regiment's band introduced jazz to the European audience, blending Caribbean and African American musical sensibilities. This is a direct example of Caribbean plus African American fusion in New York culture, not just military, but socially and musically. Right? Combat achievements. Right? Frontline service. They served 190 days. Campaign Marine Defense held the line under heavy German assault. I can't say this name. Participated in major Allied operations to break German defenses. Right? Many achievements. This is the most important part. Jamaican toasting origins and character. Jamaican toasting origins and character. Time period 1950s to 1960s. Context, Jamaican sound system culture. Definition, toasting in Jamaica was rhythmic. I can't say that word. Rhythm, talking or chanting over instrumental tracks, versions or rhythms played by sound system DJs. The toaster would hype up the crowd, introduce records, and boast, and often would call and response lines. Notable pioneers: Count Machuki, King Stick, U-Roy, Big U, and I-Roy, Prince Buster, Duke Reed. These men had laid down a vocal rhythm pattern that directly influenced later hip-hop MCing. Style elements, cadence, melodic, often syncopated, following the rhythm of the cadence, melodic, often syncopated, following the rhythm of the rhythm, or the rhyme of the rhythm. Content, boasting, social commentary, humor, praise of the sound system, and rude boy bravado. Influence, rooted in African oral traditions and the Caribbean practice of calypso talk, rhythmic speech, and storytelling. American toasting, Harlem and the Bronx. Time period, late 1960s to the 1970s, right? Urban street culture, especially in New York City, Harlem and the Bronx, surrounding boroughs. Definition, toasting in early African American vernacular meant street corner storytelling or poetic boasting, often in rhyme or meter. Popular in Harlem Renaissance nightlife, and later among street hustlers, comedians, and poets. Example, the signifying monkey and the shine and the Titanic were long oral rhymes told in a rhythmic, often raunchy comedic style. Cultural roots. Tommy Sotomayor would say English is whooping my ass. Cultural roots. African American toasts evolved out of work songs, blues poetry, and oral storytelling. These toasts were performed without music, unlike Jamaican toasting, which depended on musical backing track. Right. So these are two different versions of toasting, unique to two different identities and how they do it, express themselves. The bridge between the two. When Caribbean immigrants, especially Jamaicans, came to New York in the late 1960s and 1970s, they brought the sound system culture with them. DJ Kool Herc Clive Campbell, a Jamaican immigrant from Kingston, began playing instrumental breaks at Bronx block parties early 1970s. Herc used two turntables to extend breaks and talk rhythmically over them, just like Jamaican toasting, hyping up the crowd. Local Black American youth, many descendants of the Great Migration, added rhyme patterns and wordplay from African American toasting tradition. This fusion between Jamaican sound system toasting and African American poetic toasting is what evolved into rap MCing. So it's two identities, two cultures of toasting merging to create what you now call rap or hip hop. Jamaican toasting and African American toasting are related but not identical. Jamaican toasting is musical plus rhythm chanting, DJ tradition. African American toasting equals oral poetry and narrative bragging, storytelling tradition. Hip hop MCing in New York fused both, especially because New York had a large Caribbean and African American population mingling together. So they're not one and the same, but rather two branches of the same African diaspora tree that merged uniquely in New York City, and that fusion is what gave hip hop its DNA. People often conflate Jamaican toasting with African American toasting, right? Jamaican toasting is rhythmic shit. You know what this word says. Musical talking or chanting over records by sound system, DJs like U-Roy, King Stitt, Big U. African American toasting over street poetry, like spoken word or spoken reasons, right? Rhyme narratives and braggadocious storytelling, like Signifying Monkey, Shine, and the Titanic. Rudy Raymore, right? Both are called toasting in English, but they developed independently and merged in New York through Caribbean and African American cultural exchange. The misinterpretation. When people say toasting came from Jamaica, they often refer to Jamaican sound system DJ culture, which is absolutely true in the musical sense. The practice of talking rhythmically over instrumental tracks started there in the 1950s. While others say toasting came from Black America, they're referring to spoken word tradition, the poetic street corner. narrative rhyming that existed in Harlem and other Black American communities since the early 1900s and possibly before. So both are correct. Both are describing different parts of the same cultural evolution. The real connections: New York City. Diffusion happened in New York, especially in the Bronx, Harlem, and Brooklyn, where Caribbean immigrants, especially Jamaicans, Trinidadians, and Barbadians, and African Americans lived side by side. DJ Kool Herc, Jamaican born, brought the sound system toasting tradition from Kingston. Local Black American youths brought the rhyming and verbal competition from African American toasting and dozens tradition. This cross pollination in the 1970s created hip hop MCing, where the DJ and MC worked together using both rhythm, and rhyme. No toasting didn't originate solely in Jamaica or solely in Black America. Both had their own independent forms. What's unique is that New York City, because of its African American and Caribbean plus American mix, plus Caribbean mix, was the first place those two traditions merged into something new. That hybrid form became hip hop, and New York was the birthplace because it was the meeting ground of both diaspora cultures. All right, the origins of Jamaican sound system. All right, after World War II, so this is from the late 1940s to the 1950s. Why it started? After World War II, Jamaicans' urban working class wanted to hear American R&B. Louis Jordan, Fast Dominion, Root Brown. But imported records were expensive and local radios was limited. Entrepreneurs began staging outdoor street dances with big speaker setups. Key figures: Tom, the great Sebastian Wong, often credited as Jamaica's first major sound system operator, like late 1940s. Clement, Coxsone Dodd, later founded Studio One. Duke Reed, the Trojan, owner of Treasure Island Sound. Culture roots: street dance tradition, community gatherings from colonial and African festivals, West African growth, and call and response, rhythmic speech and musical storytelling. Technology ingenuity, repurposing military radios and PA equipment. So Jamaican sound system were homegrown innovation inspired by imported American R&B, but re-engineered through local Afro-Caribbean creativity. So they were inspired by American R&B. So I'll give FBA that, but they re-engineered it, innovated it to match as far as like the sound system creation, their own version of storytelling, their own identity, and they refit it for their own identity, right? So they were inspired by. Was there a comparable system in Black Americas pre-1970s? Not exactly. They were related precursors, but no identical sound system culture. The house party juke joint tradition, 1930s to the 1950s, U.S. South and North. Black Americans threw rent parties and juke joint dances. A single record player or a small PA might be used, sometimes with live blues bands. The Toastmaster or MC would hype the crowd verbally, early verbal showmanship, but not fully turntablism. Radio DJs, 1940s to the 1960s. Radio personalities like A.I. Benson, Chicago, Magnificent Montique, LA, and Dulles Jacko Henderson, Philadelphia, New York, right? They use rhythmic pattern and rhyme on air, sometimes over music beds. Jacko's Rocket Ship Show, my bad. Jacko's Rocket Ship Show, 1950s, is often cited as a direct ancestor of rap-style DJ talk. Mumble DJ parties. By the late 1960s, some Black and Latino DJs in New York, Grandmaster Flowers, PD DJ Jones, Mobile DJ Jones, began using two turntables and mixer for smooth transitions inspired by both club DJs and Jamaican setups. This was both before Kool Herc, showing that technology was there, but the crowd hype MC element wasn't yet dominant. The fusion point. DJ Kool Herc, Clive Campbell, he migrated from Kingston to the Bronx in 1967. He built a massive sound system, immaculating Jamaican street dances, but using American funk and soul breaks instead of reggae. Local youths, African American and Caribbean, began rhyming and chanting over those breaks. That became hip-hop DJing and MCing. So Jamaican sound system gave the technology and performance model. African American party and radio culture gave the verbal rhyme, rhythm, crowd dynamics, and musical bass. Right? Step one, inspiration. Jamaican youth heard Black American R&B, and jump groups on radio broadcasts from New Orleans, Miami, and New York. They were inspired by the sound and energy, but Jamaican had limited access to the live bands or big clubs, so they wanted to recreate the feeling of those records locally. Because records were scarce, so this is step one, inspiration. Step two, innovation. Because records were scarce, they built custom amplifiers and huge speakers, engineering innovation. They added selectors, record choosers, and toasters, vocal hype men, performance innovation. Later, producers began pressing instrumental versions for DJs to toast over, musical and innovation. Out of that out of that process came ska, rocksteady, reggae, and dub, all unique Jamaican inventions. Influence and spread. The sound system model, two turntables mic community party, migrated to New York via Caribbean immigrants. Cohort used American funk and soul records inspiration, but applied Jamaican sound system principles, innovation. This produced hip-hop DJing and American innovation rooted in diaspora cross-pollination. What about Black Americans' role? Black America produced the core musical material, R&B, soul, blues, and jazz. Caribbean DJs were inspired by that, not mimicking it. They couldn't reproduce the same band, so they re-engineered the delivery system. They re-engineered turned into a new culture technology, their sound system, the dub, and toasting. So yes, Jamaican innovation was inspired by FBA music, but it was not mimicry. It was engineering and performance innovation built atop inspiration. How to frame this accurately? Here's the most balanced way to articulate it historically. FBA, Black American culture, innovation produced music, R&B, blues, and soul. Caribbean innovation produced infrastructure and performance style, sound system, toasting. New York City became the fusion point where both diasporas combined their innovations to form hip-hop culture. Jamaicans were inspired by African music, but what they created was innovative, not mimicry. They transformed imported content into a distinct cultural and technological system that later inspired African Americans again, closing the loop and birthing hip hop. At the end of the story. Whew. Did a lot of talking. Oh, let me add this here. No. Is it this? Yeah, this. So this is the table, right? I can pause and look at these. Right. Anyway, you know. Anyway, like, this is ridiculous that we have to sit here and go through this because whatever Tariq Nasheed's, I don't know what he's doing. Maybe he's representing some racist group we don't know about. He's just having a black face. Maybe it's true what a lot of people say that FBA is the right hand of white supremacy, just with black face on it. Who knows? But anyway, this is Kish Yardi Gaming Nation or Kish Yardi Views and Vlogs. Remember to click the like, share, and subscribe.